Workshop to order. We do have a quorum present. Just so anybody from the public watching understands, this is a city commission workshop, which means we will not be taking any action or taking any votes. We will be having discussion on items. We can request information, but as a workshop, no action taken, which is also why we are able to meet virtually for this meeting. And so we do have an agenda. Anybody want to make a motion to, I'm sorry, no motions. So we will just have an agenda, and you all got that, and we will just get started on our first item. So Madam Clerk, we won't be able to approve the minutes. We'll just put those on our next GPC meeting item. Sorry, let me, I gotta get my participant screen up. There we go. We'll just put the approval of those on our next GPC item agenda. And so with that, our first discussion item is enforcement of the Alachua County COVID-19 emergency order. The county met on Tuesday and updated their order. I believe the city manager sent out an email kind of giving the highlights of that, as well as the text of the updated order. So I don't know if everyone got a chance to look at that or not. And of course, we have our ALS interpreter with us as well for this item. We thank you for being with us. Mr. Manager, I'll turn it over to you for an update and to field any questions if folks have them.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. So I thought it would be important to have a discussion regarding the COVID order that the county has promulgated. As you're aware, the county is now in week 2 of what would be a maximum of 6 weeks of an order under the law. The order, and I've sent you out about an hour ago, the most recent order that was promulgated by the county from their meeting on Tuesday. And each week they have to meet and extend or modify the order. The order basically is a mask mandate order. And 3 things I want to bring to your attention. One, it is centered on individuals, not businesses. So the enforcement action is against individuals, not the businesses that are where the individuals are located. The mask mandate basically says if you're inside a building, you have to be wearing a mask, except if you are medically exempted or under the age of 6 or engaged in eating or drinking activities. There is not a requirement for a business to post a sign, though the county is printing signs. They'll be giving us about 5,000 of those signs to distribute. The signs will, there'll be 2 types of signs, one for bars and restaurants and one for everybody else. We've told the county that we will help distribute those signs, and we will do that through our code enforcement staff, as well as GFR and GPD if we need to. Again, there's no requirement that the business actually put up the sign, but hopefully they do. The third point I just want to point out is that the county, unlike the first time, is not activating their 311 system. In discussions with the county, the idea is not to have a centralized reporting effort, but rather for the enforcers, which in this case would be the city, to go out and seek finding violators of the mask order versus having it reported. And again, I think that's more centered to the fact that this is individual based and not business based on there. The county, this first week of the order, really said that their focus was education. While not expressly put into the second order, I believe that is still their intent, is to educate. My understanding is that the way that they will be educating is periodically setting up a table in front of a business and handing out masks and literature as they did the first time around. So that's where we are. And I guess what I wanted to do, and certainly you can't vote on it, but the commission did vote at your last commission meeting to enforce the county's order. And before we go down that road, I wanted to make sure the commission understood that the enforcement activity is on individuals and not businesses, and make sure that you were comfortable with us starting to write citations if necessary um, towards those individuals, and thought we ought to have a conversation regarding that.
Thank you, Mr. Feldman. A couple quick questions. First of all, are the penalties for violation the same as they were before? And if so, what are those? Can you remind us what those are?
Yes, the penalties are the same before. We have adopted into our code a provision that basically says that the penalties that are in the county's orders are carried through to ours, and I could look up what those penalties are. I want to lead Libby's on this. He might know right off the top, but just give me a second. It's $125 for the first violation and $250 for the second violation. Third violation is mandatory court appearance and a fine not to exceed $500.
Okay, thank you. And then second question is, if folks want to report violations, I guess where I'm thinking about that, we know we're going to get these calls and emails and Facebook posts and whatever, that I was just at location X and hardly anybody was masked. And so then let's start with us. If we get those, do you want us to funnel those directly through you or code enforcement? Or the second part of that is members of the public that feel like they are, if people want to report violations, where do we recommend they do so?
Well, in the past, it was 311.
Right.
And again, it would be, since it was business oriented, we'd go out and discuss with the business and ask them to, make sure customers coming in were masked, and make sure that their employees were masked, and so forth. Here's a little bit more problematic, because if somebody sends us an email or makes a phone call, the person who's in violation is probably not there by the time we get back out there. And I'm reluctant to have our code enforcement neighborhood enhancement staff actually cite individuals. I would probably ask that or direct that GPD do more of the individual citations on individuals. I want to avoid our non-sworn staff basically get into confrontational matters that could escalate. They're not equipped. They don't have the right type of equipment to deal with that. They're not, trained for de-escalation type of activities. That's more of a GPD type of function. So right now, I would tell you that if our intent is to, enforce against individuals, channel those to me, and I will have those moved over to GPD for action.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Commissioner Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we should request that the county make some changes to their emergency order. I think we should request that they mandate that businesses have to put up the sign. I think that is at least one step. And that also that it changes from citing the person to citing the businesses, and that also they set up the 311 system, so it's an easier triage system.
Yeah, so Commissioner, I've communicated all those to the county. There's some concern on their behalf as they're trying to craft this through the governor's preemptions, that they don't want to trigger the requirement on businesses to have to demonstrate the economic impact of certain actions for each and every business. So I respect that they're treading a line that they did not create on there, but they know our concerns. And at the last commission meeting on Tuesday, the county manager did indicate that she'd heard from municipalities that we would like a business enforcement option, and the commission may consider that at their next Tuesday meeting.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. And I with the economic impact issue, there's really not an economic impact towards people wearing masks. You know, I think that was more the first time we did this. If you were requiring them to reduce occupancy, there could be, but you know, since the sign's provided for free, you know, unless they're maybe claiming they have to hire an extra person or bring an extra person on board just to do sort of checks and enforcement. I don't know, but anyway, I agree with what Commissioner Santos said. I mean, the closer it can be to the way it was originally written and enforced, the better for everybody, especially people out in the public who, you know, I think both understood it by the time, you know, it had been in place for a while and supported it. I mean, people were really good about it, you know, after that initial kind of phase-in period. So the closer we can get it to that, I think the more successful and effective it will be. Any other questions on this issue? Anything else you want the county to hear? Okay, I don't see any hands. And so I don't know who we have with us for the phone lines today.
Hi, Mayor and Commissioners. It's Bethany Taylor here. And no one on the lines at the moment to comment on this issue. Thank you.
Okay, good to have you, Bethany, and thank you. Okay, so if there's no further questions or comments that you want to share with the county on this, I guess we will go to our next item, which is the item on a youth services department. And so I guess, Mr. Feldman, I'll start with you and then let you pass it over to whoever you want.
I'll just do a quick pass off to Ms. Bowie, who has been working with an interdepartmental team to take the idea of the youth services office, department, branch, and to memorialize and put it into action per the commission's direction. And so, Deborah, it's all yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm happy to get started so that you all can have a conversation about it. So the manager mentioned that we had an interdepartmental team. We've been meeting for a number of months now, a working group that consists of GPD, myself, Park Rec, Cultural Affairs, and Roxy is out. So I don't mind giving her report, but I want to be clear that I give her all of the accolades for doing the research. So we initially started with a discussion about youth services, and we really needed to organize ourselves around two different trains of thought. One is a robust youth services department and offerings, and the other one is how does a Reichert House fit into that? We saw these as parallel but separate issues. So if you don't mind, that's important for me to say because I need to say that before setting up how we proceeded from there. So Roxy started with the Florida Recreation Park Association for referrals. She wanted to look inside the state of Florida as well as beyond for best practices and who and what municipalities were doing in the way of staff-directed youth programming. And so for the purposes of her research, that included Leon County, the city of Palm Bay, the town of Windsor, Connecticut, and North Andover, Detroit. And all of these offerings were, as you can imagine, as different as the communities. No community does it quite the same way. What we found is that all of them had some combination of staff-directed programming in conjunction with leveraging the local nonprofits who do this work. So with that premise, in all of her research, she really came to focus on North Andover, Detroit. And the reason she really liked that one, well, a couple of reasons. They started it as a one-year pilot in 1988. It was, at that point, a test for them, for the community to determine how to serve young people in their community. Today, they serve about 3,000 middle school and high school aged young people. It is a combination of staff-directed programming, but probably the most significant and important thing that they do is they leverage their partnerships with local nonprofits who provide outdoor adventures and sports and all kinds of recreation, crisis intervention, you name it, for young people and their families. She was most impressed with that because, as we all know, we have a very robust community of nonprofit providers who do this work and do it very well. So, and that being the backdrop, Roxy's recommendation is that fundamentally that we need a youth services unit. And we can do that a number of different ways, but we think the best way forward is to establish a youth services division under Park, Recs, and Cultural Affairs. We have a list of positions that we think are the right ones, with a footnote here that this hasn't been through a formal process yet with HR, because we would need to validate the job descriptions and then they need to align with our current pay structures. But her thoughts would be that it would have positions that would include a director or manager of youth services, an outreach supervisor, a certified counselor or therapist, youth development supervisor, intervention specialist, 2 rec leaders, and potentially 2 part-time. That would get us to a place of full capacity, right? We couldn't do it overnight, but certainly there's a process running the job descriptions through HR, determining what the cost would be. This model contemplates that this youth services department division would launch 5 programs, internal and external. So a combination of.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but just real quick before you go on, because I think it's helpful. If you have access, or the clerk can pull up that, it was sort of the budget breakdown, but it has those positions that you just described listed. And if we could pull that up on screen share, just so people can kind of be looking and thinking about those positions while you're talking about how they would operationalize, that would be helpful. Madam Clerk, can you do that?
Give us just a minute to grab it out of the backup.
It's the first one. If that's helpful, it's the one that's Youth Services Research, PRCA.
I can grab it. Or
while she's doing that, I just want to mention that this is really for conversation. You see it up here on the screen. These may or may not be the positions that we land on, but for the purposes of the conversation, this is where the funding recommendation comes from. And that is, if you could scroll down, I think, to the bottom. Yeah, so you see that all in total expenditures. We've applied what the benefits calculation would be. So we estimate at least a $700,000 impact, right, to create these positions. Positions may change in nature, but that would be what we think we need to get to a fully operational youth services division. So put a pin on that, because parallel to this conversation is the Reichert House. And in our internal working group discussions, what we've all agreed to is that Reichert House is an incredibly valuable, unique program that serves at-risk boys. They don't have a girls programming effort yet. We see that as a very specialized youth service program, sort of a spoke in the wheel, right? So you would see that under a comprehensive umbrella of youth services programming. Reichert House is a program that has a very long history. So we want to be really thoughtful about if in the future, let's say you stand up a youth services department and you move Reichert House, we would really recommend that you have some significant community engagement. There is obviously a lot of history. We have a lot of staff. Many of them have been with the city and in those positions, some 13 years. So we see that as 2 things that can happen in parallel, but maybe the Reichert House could be moved later after the youth services department is up and operational. And their entire budget would need to move with them. So we see that as a specialized program under an umbrella service of youth programming. And I am happy to answer any and all questions. I do want to say that we have been thoughtful about how to do this, understanding that we may incrementally get to this place, but we wanted you all to see, when you talk about a youth services division, what kind of staffing would we be looking to, and then what budget would go along with that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bowie, and Madam Clerk, you can pull the screen down. I think that was helpful to be able to look at those. And so we'll go over to the commission and start with Commissioner Ariola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Deborah. And I know thoughts with Roxy would have really loved to have her here to present that. I know a lot of her work went into it. This is the culmination of a lot of months of putting staff together, engaging with the community, and really answering a lot of the commission's questions up until now about how we can add a division of child and youth services to our repertoire. And I think this is a really good roadmap and a really good starting point. I think I'll start where Ms. Bowie left off, which is how do we get to this 700,000 off the bat? And I think that the best thing to do is to split this cost into 2 years. We do 2-year budgets all the time for offices and for departmental expenditures. And the reason why I think we can do that is we can have 350 this year in this fiscal year, which will, if next year we add another 350, so for a total of 700 next year, that'll get us to a place where we can hire those 7 full-time employees with a couple of part-time and look at the programming. It's going to take time to hire people. It's just a fact. So there will be that period of time in this first year where we're really looking to stand up the division. And as far as, I was really intrigued by a lot of the research from North Andover in Detroit, and really the discussion about how much do we want this to be internal programming and how much do we want this to be external support for other groups. And I think that's a really good policy discussion. I think that we need to build capacity before we can really finally answer that question as to what is the best use of our resources year after year after year. And I'd really like us to focus more on the staffing and funding question right now. And hopefully my idea is that once this division really gets its first hires and when we can have more of a general policy discussion about it, we can begin to give direction if the commission is interested. But I would really like to get recommendations back from the hired staff as to what direction we ought to go in terms of the balance between internal and external, because we know that there's a lot of community resources towards child and youth services. And we also know that Alachua County and the school board are going to be interested in this as well. And so I'd like for them to have an ample opportunity to jump in before we give too much policy direction in terms of how we're going to assist them, or if we're going to just, have our own procedures. So I think that would be fantastic. Travel is difficult right now, but I think whenever travel isn't difficult, maybe some type of a working trip to Detroit to look at some of their work, I think would be beneficial for this group. But that's more just details going down the road. So I'd like to hear what my colleagues have to say, but I'd really like for us to begin to put this into our operating budget. I advocated for the increased millage so that there would be room, not just for this, but for other items. So yeah, I'd like to hear what y'all have to say. But I really appreciate all the work that's gone into this, and I appreciate you all engaging in the motions that have led to this point and giving staff the direction to come up with these ideas. I'm very grateful for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ariola. Up next, we have Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree a lot with what Commissioner Ariola said. I'm a little bit unclear about the budget. So does the budget include the positions that are in Reichert House and Bold at the moment, or is this completely and totally separate? Like this is this is absolutely what it's going to take. So like, so we can't move a few positions for this in order for us to decrease this budget. Is that right?
So it is separate. The Reichert House budget is not included. This is a brand new, these are positions that currently we do not have, and we contemplate them being positions or ones closely aligned with those that would make up a youth services division. The Reichert House budget, I think, is around 1 million, but that's not reflected in what you see. That would be a separate, and that would be literally moving that asset to youth services down the road if that is the desire.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all that I have. I'm trying to actually go back to the first presentation that we got about this a couple of months ago, and I appreciate all the hard work that you all have put in since then, about specifically what we're trying to accomplish with this youth services department. And I want to make sure that we are all actually on the same page about that, because since we've had some of those conversations, since we've had that first presentation, rather, there have been some conversations in the community that folks feel like there needs to be kind of a clearinghouse / kind of organizer of a lot of the services that are already in Gainesville for youth services. And some folks like the energy and the time and the resources are best spent at this moment. So I'm wondering if that is something that I can't remember everything. I wonder if that's something that we've talked about, and it's something that we are considering for this youth services department. Oh, that's it. Yeah, it's just a question that I'd like, to get answered. I really just can't remember whether or not we talked about that specific aspect of that for the department.
Mr. Feldman, can you add some clarity to that?
I can. And so I think as we move forward into the youth services realm, that will be something that we're going to need to work on to understand the city's position and role in the bigger youth services position. You know, we now have the Children's Trust. The county has a robust role in the provision of youth services through their social service aspect, and especially through things like court services as well. And so we will play a more significant role in that, and potentially could act as a broker for trying to bring more of those services to the Gainesville youth. But what that exact role is, I think we're going to have to feel that out as we move along. Very similar to how we deal with our houseless neighbors. We've assumed more role and responsibility over the years than we initially had.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm more apt to say that we should be as intentional as possible from the outset about what we want this department to be, the purpose of it, what we want some of the outcomes to be, so that we can then plan for it. I mean, in my experience at the city so far, I've seen plenty of kind of positions that we've created because the commission says, we need X, Y, and Z, but we haven't been very clear about what we want either the people in those positions to accomplish or what we want the outcomes to be. So I think it would serve us all best to get very clear about that early on, so that we can hire the right people and we can talk to the community in the way that they need to be talked to, not talked to, but talked with, so that we can accomplish all of our goals together. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So one of my initial goals with this conversation, when we started it on kind of parallel tracks months ago, back near the beginning of the year, was thinking along the lines of the reality that we have youth services in the city of Gainesville now. We already do. We don't have a robust set of youth services, but we do offer Reichert House. We do offer some things through Parks and Rec already. What we don't do a terrific job of is training, oversight, and accountability for those services because they exist in various parts of the organization. And one
You
of
are
my
the last party in the conference.
in addition to adding some extra functionality that will hopefully be useful for the community, for youth and children in our community, young people, is just as a logistical place where these programs can live and be accountable. Instead of trying to train people who are dealing with youth in various parts of the organization, if we have them all in one place, it's a lot easier to have expectations set and to achieve accountability for those that we can then report back out to the community. In other words, it's a risk management practice for me as much as it is everything else. And that's a very important piece of this for me going forward. Getting the staff started and getting a structure in place is key to that. And yeah, we do need to make sure that we know that we're going in eyes wide open and that we have that we give good direction to what we're trying to create here. From a budget viewpoint, I totally agree. We could spread this out over a couple of years because we are 14 months away from fiscal 2023 already. The reality of hiring all these positions in fiscal 22, probably unlikely, given where the community and the country is in hiring people. It's a tough time to bring good people on. So the idea that it might take us a couple of years or at least 14 months to fully staff is I don't think too outlandish. So I'd be interested in doing that, but I think we should leave the funding and the staff recommendations to staff. I don't want us to dictate exactly where the money's going to come from or exactly who's going to get hired first or any of those things, but we do need to put clear expectations out there. But I think it's important to remind everyone that the original conversation included creating a place where all our existing programs could end up. And I don't mean moving them all immediately. I'm not saying we should move Record House right now. That's not my goal. I want to do it in a way that makes sense and that keeps everybody on board, that the community is comfortable with it, that the folks who are delivering the services and the people who are receiving those services and their families can be on board with that. But ultimately, I would like to see all our youth services that we currently offer and the ones that we could potentially offer all live in the same department where they can be easily accountable, easily trained, easily kept up after. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Hey, thank you, Commissioner Asante.
Thank you, Mayor. Agree with everyone who's spoken so far. I think Commissioner Ariola's path is laid out as a good path. I also believe having it as a division inside Parks and Rec is better than having it as a separate department. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Back to Commissioner Ariola.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to address some of the valid points that were made by my colleagues. So first, I completely agree with being intentional in how we give goals. So I'm just going to read some of the proposed goals. When I first brought this up at the beginning of the year, I had a long Word document. So I'm going to just read some of those so they can give you all sort of a clear idea into what I'm expecting out of this office, some of the ideas I want them to engage with. I want to see measurable decrease in youth unemployment in Gainesville. I want to assist educational institutions with increased graduation rates, reduced youth incarceration and recidivism, lifting up of youth leadership. This can either be with, in the past we held a team political forum, and right before the pandemic broke, we were working on the idea of a youth advisory board. Those can be stood back up again. I want to identify and create benchmarks for youth achievement with partner organizations. So this would require us using data from, the Children's Trust Study and the Youth Summit and all those things, but really to figure out what are the benchmarks for youth achievement that other organizations are setting forward. So not just employment, not just graduation rates. I want us to end child and youth homelessness in Gainesville. That is a blight on modern society in any city. And I think we should take it seriously about how we address youth and child homelessness. We can work with partners to achieve that. So as I'm saying these things, think about the balance that I mentioned between what is going to be an internal project and what isn't, and what will be external in helping partners outside of the city of Gainesville. And you can see that a lot of the things I'm mentioning is very external heavy. And so, whenever staffing has to decide how do we sort of balance these things, you're going to be meeting these organizations where they already are, whether it's in the schools or whether it's in, in some cases, the criminal justice system. So, but I don't want us to get lost in the weeds right this minute, because there's a lot you can get into on that. And I do appreciate that the commission sort of guided my policy direction another way, because it is very difficult to have these very complex policy discussions, and then at the same time you're starting something brand new. So I do appreciate that. I want there to be concentrated multicultural and multiracial engagement. To me, this is going to be an extra effort on bringing in people together, youth from all races and ethnicities, all throughout the city. I think that's going to be a really important part of this division. Technical vocational opportunity expansion, connecting youth to programs and perhaps even creating new programs to fill in. There's a lot of opportunity there. And then broad strokes like economic opportunity for youth and assisting young families with children. I think that is a huge one. The Children's Trust has a big part to play in looking at assistance, child care assistance. But I also think that this is not just looking at child care. This is looking at holistic overall community assistance for families with young children. And then we're going to have to continue to fine tune this. One of the researchers, Dr. Deidre Huchin, that I've been speaking with a lot in her research, has mentioned that in terms of youth development being an academic discipline, there's a lot of really exciting new research going on into how you set up systems within a community involving the government and involving private institutions, and how do you set those up to optimize the assets that exist in our youth, their minds, their hearts, their bodies, their self-confidence, those things. And so we have to continue every year to figure out how do we optimize our organization to plug in with the rest of the systems around the community. So those are just some broad strokes that I've got. I appreciate the support that I've heard. So what I'm going to do is just make a general motion that I think gets us to the next step. You're shaking.
All right, workshop, no motions. You can give us a hypothetical motion that you might want to bring up at a future meeting.
Oh, my mistake. I didn't realize that we were in a workshop.
Yeah, that's the only thing allowing us to meet virtually. But why don't you tell us what a motion would sound like if we were able to accept one?
This is what one would sound like in the English language. So direct the city managers to include in the fiscal year 22 and 23 budget a phase-in creation of a division of child and youth services, and to bring back an organizational memo to include positional roles, duties, and responsibilities.
So Mayor, if the commissioner did make that motion, I'd be happy to report that it will be included in the budget, and we're on that track.
So when is the next meeting that I can put this into motion? It sounds like practice.
Next Thursday, or actually at any of our budget meetings. It sounds like, pardon me, y'all, but when Carlos wants affection, he gets affection. Mr. Manager, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've included this in your proposed budget.
Yeah,
is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Okay. So when we vote to approve our budget in September, this will be part of what we're voting.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, well, since I can't move that, I'll just go ahead and conclude my comments, but thank you all for your support.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Saka.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Gonna lower my hand. There we go. Mr. Feldman, if this were already included in the budget, as you said it might be, is it in the phased in approach or for the whole estimated department?
I have it at this point in the phased in approach.
And what's included, I guess, what does one phase look like at that point?
Well, it's what I've done is included a blanket 350 for phase to stand this up. So I'm not quite sure exactly what that looks like. I mean, we will have that as a budget appropriation. That may bring in, 50% of the positions on October 1st. It may be 75% of the positions, halfway through the year. We'll work on refining that, which I think would be was Commissioner Ariola's second part of the motion he couldn't make, but we'll, have a phase-in program that we'll be developing to ramp that up so that in fiscal year 23 we're at the full funding and ramped up.
Okay. So I also appreciate that method. When Ms. Bowie first spoke to us, like that was my preference. I worry about putting it in fiscal year 22 only because it still has to go to HR to kind of finalize the job descriptions, to figure out salaries and compensation. So all of that still needs to be done. And I'm not sure how long that takes. So I wonder about appropriating money that might just sit there.
Yeah, I'm not sure I share the same concern because at this point, we will have the budget capacity for fiscal year 22. If we don't spend the funds, they just roll the fund balance and then provide support for fiscal year 23. So I think, at the 50% funding level, we should be fine.
I'll trust your word on that. Okay. No, we're good. We're good for now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all, especially Commissioner Ariola, for sort of blowing your shoulder into this. I know that it's something you've been working on with folks on our staff and then many folks external to the organization for quite some time. So I know it must be a relief to you to get to this point. I do, looking into the crystal ball, I envision this first year as a bit exploratory. I think it's most important to, as quickly as possible, hire the right person for that manager / director, whatever their title ends up being, that has some experience in this area and can help shape what the rest of the program is going to look like. And so that'll take some time to find that right person. And then they're going to need some significant time to sort of lay out, okay, what do we need to do? And then I can find the right people to fill in those positions. And that's going to be, that's going to take the better part of the fiscal year, I believe, because working with the Children's Trust, with Boost, with Reichert House, with Alachua County Public Schools, with UF and Santa Fe, with the faith-based organizations, all who will have a part of this, we don't know what that's going to look like. And it's going to take that manager or director with that experience to help us. So the onboarding process is going to, it's just going to take time. And so I think that 50% increment is probably more than will actually get expended. Because this first year is going to be time intensive. And then I'm hoping by year 2, the whole system has been designed, the positions have been filled, and then, it can get to the sort of ongoing work looking forward. The other one thing I just want to bring up now, so we're intentional about how this will work with this new, I don't know what we're calling it yet, group, is that we very specifically look at how we can serve and reach the LGBTQIA youth community. That's something that is very much missing in most of our public agencies in our area. There are some private organizations that do a better job of that, but the public organizations are significantly behind where we should be for a community that certainly looks to support those neighbors of ours. So let's just add that to when we bring the director on and are looking at who we work with and how we're going to serve, that we're having conversations about that group of neighbors as well. But I'm excited. I'm always never seem excited. When I'm really excited, I'm not too rah, but I'm super excited. If I had little streamers that could pop, I would, because this is huge, and it's going to make a huge impact on tens of thousands of people that live in our community and shape who we are, in a much more focused way. So great job to everybody. Certainly Ms. Gonzalez, you, Ms. Bowie, who I know have sort of been the shepherds guiding this through, and Commissioner Ariola for being the champion. Commissioner Sacco, back to you.
Mr. Mayor, forgot something. Ms. Bowie, maybe I missed it earlier. Is the goal to hire this director, manager, what have you, have them do the research and propose the the operation or methods or programs involved in this department, division, what have you, or that we, based on the research Ms. Gonzalez provided, choose a direction to go in terms of what services we want the department to serve?
So I think it's a little bit of both. I know that that Roxy's goal is to hire a director. Now, let me just say, Roxy's background is actually in programming. So that's a benefit to us, because prior to this discussion, one of the things that unit, PRCA, had been talking about is how to increase some of the programming that we're offering in the neighborhoods. We've had a lot of conversations. We've been meeting, for example, with Porter's Quarters about offering some additional programming there, but we obviously don't have the capacity for that. So this is really in Roxy's wheelhouse. Her goal is to hire an experienced manager and then to work with that manager to build out the rest of the team. Again, the structure that we provided was really based on research. Some of those positions may be different once we really get into the nitty-gritty of what they are, what characteristics, skill sets we're looking for. We see this, though, just when I was listening to the conversation earlier, I think it's worth me sharing that in our working group conversation, when we started down this path, we talked about the need to build a youth services division that is not built on criminalizing children, right? And I don't say that in a disparaging way. Reichert House is a fantastic youth program, but Reichert House doesn't contemplate programming for all inclusiveness of our kids. So Roxy's goal is to hire someone, and then she would work with them to build out the rest of the team using the template of the job, the postings that she thinks she will need to build the division. But I think she definitely wants someone who has a background in this and experience to really help her think through what that looks like. And then ultimately the goal will be that we'll have a partnership that we can leverage those organizations in the community who do this work, because we all know the city staff cannot do all of it. The best outcome, I think, is to have a fully engaged community, because people can tell you what they need and what they want in their neighborhoods. And we think we can design something that gives them that and gives our staff an opportunity to have some programming as well.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
On mute. Still on mute.
You're muted, Lauren.
Mayor.
Yeah, you didn't need to hear it. I had to say anyway. It wasn't any good. I was just saying, I'm really jazzed about this. Thank you all for everybody who contributed. And so let's go over to Bethany now and see if any of our neighbors want to share their thoughts on youth services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No one has called in for this item.
Okay, very good. So we'll just, for those following along, our next action on this will be when we discuss the adoption of our budget, which will be, there'll be 2 readings on that in September. And that will officially get this thing moving forward and give staff the green light to start building it out, which is incredible. All right, our next item then is a discussion of a potential sales tax. Real high level here, folks. The county, of course, has the authority to levy an additional half-cent or full-cent sales tax in a few different areas, and they are considering that right now. You know, I think the intention here today was just to have a discussion amongst ourselves to see if there are areas that we as a commission are interested in discussing with them and would be likely to support, and also areas that we're not really interested in. And so if they bring it up, we could just tell them, like, that's not something that we really see as a benefit to our neighbors right now, or something we're interested in pursuing. That discussion will most likely come up at our next joint city county meeting. You know, those of you that have been doing this for a while know that there's a pretty long runway that's necessary to get something on the ballot for November 22. So really, we would need to have an agreement in terms of you know, how the revenues would be split and what they'd be spent on and everything else, quite a bit ahead of that to get the ballot language approved, and then allow enough time for our voters to consider whether it's something they want to support or not. I will just say that I continue to be supportive and believe that there is a need for some level of transportation funding, consistent long-term transportation funding, to be focused on 2 main areas. One is expanding transit availability and access to the areas of our city that are less served, you know, that have less frequent headways and shorter hours of service, and also to have a dedicated revenue stream to address our Vision Zero initiative. You know, we continue just to see you know, people being killed on our roads, people being seriously injured, and if we don't have a substantial revenue stream to address those issues, that the trickle is never going to catch up, you know. So that's my main area. I'm willing to listen to and consider others. I know that there's going to be strong support for a renewal of the wild spaces public places, and I absolutely support that. What we'll need to do as a commission is start working with our community to develop a new list like we did the last time. I'm sure if that goes back out for consideration, it will have that same stipulation that only items that are on the list can be funded through that tax, sort of that are approved ahead of time. that creates a very high degree of confidence amongst potential voters. And so that'll be the hard work for us is figuring out what goes on that list and sort of how we should prioritize that funding. But I know that, you know, we can do that. We can really sink our teeth into that, you know, in late fall, early or midwinter, if the county decides to move ahead with that. So that's where I am on that, and you know, love to hear what the rest of you think. So let's go over to Commissioner Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. With just on one note, with the new census, we are above 50% of the population of the county, so we can put a ballot on our own tax as well, a countywide tax if we felt necessary to. I think we should do 1 penny instead of doing the 2 pennies. I think doing something similar to what Pinellas and then Leon County and other ones, I think allows us more flexibility as issues come up. We don't know exactly what 8 years from now, 10 years from now, there might be issues that need more money. So I think having a broader look at it. For me, I think there's ones I'd like for us to consider, and I think having a broad different uses that could be used. I think we should have a list, but there could be broad things to be used for. I think fire station construction, we have significant issues for that. I think street light infrastructure, lighting is deals with Vision Zero, but also deals with public safety and is one of the top concerns of our community. I think purchasing environmentally sensitive land, similar to what's under wild spaces now. I think we should look at, we've been building a lot of parks. I think we should look at how can we use maybe some of this funding for maintaining some of the parks too. Some of the infrastructure that fails that we can maintain with that money, building new parks. I think having some money set aside that could be used for economic development, depending on what it is. The public transit that you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, I have on here Vision Zero, and I think significant amounts towards bike and pedestrian infrastructure. I also believe we should look at having funding available for greenway trails. We had talked about that as a city, of looking at that in all of our creek trails, but also I think the biggest example is the Hogtown Creek Greenway. I think affordable housing should also be a component of the sales tax, and broadband as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think it's absolutely necessary that we do this. And by do this, I mean offer it to the people. You know, we certainly don't make the decision. We make the decision on whether to work with the county on placing it on a ballot. And from there, it's in the hands of the public. This is not a taxing decision we make a yes or no on. And with that in mind, I think we should absolutely move forward to ask the question. I think it needs to be an omnibus tax. I don't want to do a one specific thing push on this. Much like Leon and Pinellas counties have had success with, I think maybe not a kitchen sink, but something very much like that. Let folks know what we're trying to accomplish, what broad categories, and move on from there. I would absolutely like us to work on building those greenways that connect our community. We have lots of greenways, and we made tremendous progress 20 or more years ago as a community with that. And then we kind of patted ourselves on the back and let some other communities leapfrog us. And now it's time to get serious about those again. You know, where can we really beef up our trail system in ways that make sense? Because that's how it's one of the ways we connect neighborhood to neighborhood and people to people. Fire infrastructure is very important. We know that we don't have the fire safety infrastructure to support the next decade or two, and it's time to think seriously about that. And we'll have information coming back from the study that we have working on with that. I believe the county is already engaged a firm to work on public opinion with this and see what people really feel, and so that we don't have to work on anecdotal information. So, you know, I'm interested in hearing what results they have, if any, and what their procedure has been for moving that forward. But generally speaking, I'm certainly in favor of putting it on the ballot. Let's see what the people say. I'll be in favor of of that, and we'll work hard to get it passed. But you know, it won't be up to us ultimately. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. I have a question about whatever we decide to do, a penny or 2 pennies. If we were to do a penny, would we be able to set aside a certain amount specifically for one purpose? Is that possible? It is? Okay. So what I'm going to advocate for is, I think, the most pressing issue that we have right now that we're facing in Gainesville, and that's affordable housing. I'm in agreement with a lot of what my colleagues have said about infrastructure and greenways and et cetera. But I think that considering we've always said that affordable housing is one of the biggest priorities we have as a commission, then it would be important to recognize that in the funding. And so I would say that we should absolutely put this on the ballot and then set aside a certain amount specifically for affordable housing. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And I know, I don't know. I mean, I bet a week's pay that the county is very much thinking along those lines too, because they have this new affordable housing trust fund, right? That they amended their charter to create, but it has no funding. And so I know they're looking for a specific dedicated revenue source that could, you know, put money in that account. So
you're not very much of a betting man if you're only doing 1 week, Lauren. I know how much you make.
I'm still committed. But yeah, I know that's going to be part of their sort of priority, and I agree with you. To have a dedicated revenue source to go into that, you know, new fund would be really helpful. Commissioner Ariola.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just a technical question on timetables. When we'd have to put a question like this to, you know, get that all that rolling.
Yeah, anybody from legal want to walk us backwards from November 22?
So I can take a stab.
Dan needs on too. Dan.
Oh, okay.
Dan, you ready to?
Yeah, what was the question?
Ballot questions. How do we get them
The
on
question is about Miller v. California. No, it's walking us backwards from November 22, where this, you know, would appear on
For a ballot initiative?
Yeah, what's the timetable that we need to sort of get everything decided to make sure that it's there in plenty of time?
Well, the statewide primary election is going to be in August, so those ballot initiatives won't be set till, or candidates won't be set till after then. So if it was finalized before then, I'm sure you'd be fine. But walking back prior to that, in terms of what the process for this initiative, I don't know exactly, but I'm guessing you're talking sometime in early summer.
Okay, yeah, there's a little more to it than I know. It's because you've got to have ballot language approved, and so Lee, you've been through this a bunch of times.
Yeah, so working back, the county would have to send the language supervisor of elections in June. Before that, they have to have the ballot language and some other stuff approved by OPAGA, which is a state agency that reviews this language. That takes 60 days. So they have to submit that language usually in April to get it approved. And so it's really between now and April that all this will have to be worked out with the county.
And that's for a November question or an August question?
November.
Yeah, so if we wanted to put it on August, all that moves up 3-4 months.
I think it actually has to be on a general election based upon some new statutory language that came
Okay, that's simple.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was asking for the general election. My expectation is that it would be a general election. I know that we've moved elections to August, but those are still general primary elections when you take into account the top of the ballot, which is what we do. So okay, that's fine. Well, in principle, I'm obviously, I was super gung ho about the census for this very reason, so that we could begin to cross these benchmarks and put Gainesville onto a brand new plane for how we fund our public projects and stuff. So it'll all just come down to the details in terms of how we want to set that up. I'm not just going to blanket support. I don't know what the phrase was used, some sort of a blank check or something like that. I'm not going to support something like that. But if we want to have a major funding source come out of sales taxes for public projects that the community is in need of, then I would be in support of something like that. But it ain't going to be no blank checks around here. Thanks.
Okay. So don't see any other hands. So I'll go back to Bethany to see if any neighbors want to speak on this issue.
No, sir. No callers for this item.
Okay, excellent. So we'll look forward to having that discussion with our county commissioner cohorts soon. All right, so our final business item for discussion is the special election. And so Daniel, I'm assuming that you can, or Omi, I'm sorry, you're pulling your screen up, can walk us through this process. Whoever is ready to walk us through the special election process. Go ahead.
Got it, Dan.
Okay, certainly. Yeah, well, we're faced with the situation of a prospective vacancy in our commission, and under our charter, not just the ordinances, once there is a vacancy, we're required to have a special election to fill that vacancy if the time remaining until the next general election is greater than the 6 months. So all the information we have at this point is that there's a commissioner that's intending to resign the seat rather imminently. It will be at a time a vacancy is created more than 6 months away from the next general election, so that it will be not only required to have a special election, but to have one within 60 days under our charter. We've sort of laid out a timeline, and there's a broad timeline in front of you here about how we proceed with that. Then we've worked under the assumption, just based upon the comments that we've heard, that the vacancy would be around September 30th, October 1st. And then we would have election day again, no later than 60 days after that. Working backwards from that date, qualifying period has to be 46 to 50 days prior to that. And then which to be followed by a proclamation calling the election, and an election sometime in presumably November. It is a little more complicated than that, and trying to see if rather than this, Omi, can I share what we were talking about earlier?
Yes. Share screen at the bottom.
Yeah.
Back whenever you're ready.
And it is not allowing me to.
I have it up. I can play with it. Just let me know what you want me to change.
Okay. All right. Well, I can't see it. Are you able to see it?
Can you see my screen?
No, I've frozen up again. This happened at the earlier meeting today. All right. Well, I'll just proceed without the benefit of seeing what y'all see. We tried to throw together sort of a spreadsheet detailing the operative dates. And the problems we have, of course, is that between now and 60 days from the end of September, we have several holidays that we need to be cognizant of. And then we have some hard dates in there as well. Let me see. Yeah, my whole thing is frozen up.
I have it up. So if you want to give me any kind of directions here, I can make the changes as we all watch the screen.
Oh, I just lost you all together. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Doggone it. All right. Well, in any event, what we see is that if we work from a date that is an October 1st vacancy date, it would populate us to have an election by November 30th. Luckily, that's a Tuesday. Working back from the November 30th, the dates fill in as shown in the spreadsheet that I think you're able to see here. We have the questions remaining is to what extent the commission would want to have early voting. I don't believe it's required under our charter or our ordinances, and it would be very difficult to have in a situation such as this because of the holidays getting in the way. In addition to that, it'd be whether or not this would be a sort of winner take all election or my screen keeps flipping, or an election with a runoff as we would normally have. Again, I don't think it's absolutely necessary based upon the charter language that we have. It is rather an unusual situation, and we'd be running into a runoff election 6 weeks after the general election, with the general election sometime in November. Then we're bouncing right into Christmas and Hanukkah and other holidays as well, which might make not only the operation of the election difficult, but certainly would affect turnout. As it is, with the election in this time frame, it is incredibly difficult for the supervisor of elections. We've talked with her extensively over the past week, and to be quite honest, she really is. We're very fortunate to have her in her office with their dedication to helping us in this matter. And it is incredibly burdensome, because frankly, this is the time of year in which they would normally be able to do all of their annual maintenance, so forth, that they would do to their operations, and to have an election that is more than half the electors in the county really puts quite a burden, and a burden on very short notice. So she's doing everything she can to help us, and we're very appreciative of that. The last time we had a standalone election, just for informational purposes, I think our costs to the supervisor were in the range of $193,000 to $196,000 or so, plus whatever costs we incur. So there will be a cost factor attributed to the election, and to the extent that that might be lessened, but based on decisions made by the commission, that's certainly a possibility, such as whether or not to hold early voting, whether or not to have a runoff election, whether or not to have all precincts open. Frankly, from talking with the supervisor, it may not be possible to have all precincts open, just because we have the holiday situations, and obviously we're still dealing with the pandemic. And to have precincts open in times to which they're not normally accustomed to having precincts is going to be difficult altogether. That being said, precincts can be combined, and it might be a decision made that we would combine precincts to maybe half as many and send out notices to electors to alert them to that fact as well. I guess all of this is a long way of saying that the vacancy, depending upon the date, is going to really set in motion all of these factors for the election. The first question that I had to consider is, how do you create a vacancy on a commission? I know that Commissioner Johnson has indicated that she intends to resign her position in end of September, early October, or thereabouts. But when that is actually official, I think is a matter that's still a little bit of an open question. The only analogous thing I can really think of is in the resign to run context, where people, a sitting officer, be they elected or otherwise, in order to qualify for other office, as to irrevocably resign from their current seat. And usually that resignation would be as of the date the new office would commence, or a person who won that other race would commence their office. And that requires a written letter being given to the qualifying officer for the seat they currently have. In this case, that would be our clerk. And then a copy going to the governor and the secretary of state. Is that necessary in a situation like this where it's not, resignation isn't in place in order to enable qualifying, but it's just as an indication of a vacancy being created? Probably not. I think it would be a matter in which a resignation would be made and it would be accepted or declared by the commission itself. Does that, can that vacancy be declared in a future date? I suppose only if it was made in an irrevocable fashion by the office holder. So it might be that the vacancy isn't declared until the vacancy actually exists. In any event, we would commence conferring and working with the supervisor at the first, we already have, as soon as possible. I hope that helps fill you in with some of the information that, you know, the steps that have to be completed and the decisions that will have to be made in relatively short order. Those decisions being primarily, when will the vacancy commence? Will early voting be part of the decision? Will a runoff be part of the decision? Those two things will then also drive what the actual date is once the date of the vacancy determines the outside date of the election. You know, for example, an election on November 30th, if you were to have early voting, you'd have early voting during Thanksgiving. That may not be the most acceptable time to have it. Could an election be held on November 16th? Perhaps. But then if you were to have a runoff election, you'd be running up right into, I think, right around Hanukkah and Christmas time. So all of those factors interplay, as they always do with elections. But this is all in a much more compressed time frame. Are there any specific questions that you have about how we move forward?
Thank you, Mr. Nee. You know, looking at this, when I was looking at the calendar and the dates, I felt like the November 30th date was not ideal, coming right after the Thanksgiving break. And so what I was looking at, thanks, Omi, you're pulling up. Yeah. So what I was looking at was the 16th, November 16th. And then I was hoping we could work on a 4-week runoff. So I think that's December 14th or 15th. But it looks like we would need to change, amend our ordinance, which I feel like we could do. We could amend an ordinance to create a special exception for an election to fill a vacancy for a 4-week runoff. We, of course, would need to get that cleared through the supervisor of elections, but I'm hoping because this is a single seat, no other issues, nothing else on the ballot, do a 4-week. Runoffs used to be 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And so, you know, I would like to know from Supervisor Barton whether they could do a 4-week runoff if that's what called for. So then, you know, I think we avoid those problems with the various holidays if we do it on November 16th and that 4-week runoff. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Mayor, I can see you again. I can see myself now also. And I've tried to share that spreadsheet we were talking about. And this was sort of just a rough and dirty spreadsheet we threw together in the last day or so. And as you can see, I don't know, can you see the spreadsheet?
We can, yes.
Yeah, if we leave the date November 16th and the sort of movable dates I've put in green here, with the fixed dates, really the holidays in red, and the black dates all being working off of that vacancy date or the election day, you can see how it fills in. Now, whether a runoff election could happen in 4 weeks, you're right. That would be a question for the supervisor. Is it likely? There's no way that it's likely. I know that we've continuously had problems. Our ordinances used to be such that we did provide less time between qualifying and elections and between the election and the runoff. But the added demands that have been placed on supervisor's office by state law is such that it keeps getting moving back. And a lot of our concerns revolve around the actual obtaining of ballots from the vendor. And that's a big part of the issue. And then getting them to overseas voters such that overseas voters can get them back in time. So yeah, we would certainly can ask the supervisor, what is the tightest time frame we could have to have a runoff? But I know we moved it back incrementally on more than one occasion, and we're at 6 weeks right now. And I don't think we can get it any closer. For example, qualifying for county offices, I think is 76 to 80 days, as opposed to we work with a 46 to 50 day type time frame, which will be ending, I believe, next year. But yeah, we can certainly have that discussion with the supervisor, but I'd be surprised if we got less than 6 weeks to have a runoff.
Okay, well, that's my, I think that creates the best opportunity for, maximizing voter participation, because everything else gets very, very clumsy. I also, definitely believe that we need to have early voting and mail-in voting. About half of our residents choose one of those two types of participation to cast their vote. I'd be open to combining precincts, but we would really have to do an outstanding job of making sure people knew where they would be going if they're used to their usual precinct on election day. So that would be the challenge with that. But there's a trade-off, obviously. There's big disadvantages to having all the precincts open, whether they can get staffed and those facilities are available and all those other things. Commissioner A. Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think the 16th is a good date. We could try pushing it up one more week too, and if that might make it so we could have the runoff and also it doesn't have to be on a Tuesday either. We could have a different day. A lot of other places do different days. As for runoff, I'd rather it have before we get into the holiday break, but we could always push it back into January, but I think that starts to make things more difficult. I agree. I think we should have a runoff, and I agree with your other statements on early voting and mail-in voting. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thanks. And we can't have a runoff on December 21st. I mean, that's many families are off that week and travel, and it's their attentions will be focused elsewhere.
And I think Mr. Hayes Santos made a good point. While a runoff may not be able to happen in less than 6 weeks, it could be a larger period. That's never ideal, but that could be the solution is to do a runoff 8 weeks afterwards, after the general.
Yeah. I mean, it's good to know we have that option. I think runoff periods are too long. I think in elections, ideally you have a runoff like 2 weeks later because people are still paying attention and involved. And the longer the period of time, I mean, we've noticed this and since we moved runoffs from like 2 or 3 weeks to 6 weeks, it costs more money and whatever. It's all those things that kind of make elections not as good. I mean, my main thing I'd like to know, Madam Clerk, if we can follow up with Supervisor Barton, is if it's even possible to have a 4-week runoff with just a single seat election. And if that's a hard no, then that tells us a lot.
I can tell you now, Mayor, that's definitely a hard no. We've already asked that question and I've gotten it's an absolute no-go. So 6 weeks is the minimum time that's needed to do all of the things that Mr. D mentioned above involving, UOCAVA ballots and the printing of ballots, et cetera.
Okay, well then, I mean, then I would go for the, then I would support the November 30th, and then have the runoff in January. I mean, that's the next best thing to me. Yeah, not ideal, but next best thing. Okay, let's go back around the horn. Commissioner Sacco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm uncomfortable with that 11/30th, just because people will still be out, students may still be out, and they're a good percentage of our population. They deserve a say in this. Professors might be out, whole families might still be out for extended periods because of the holiday. I know we don't have many great choices available, but I don't feel entirely comfortable with that one because of the number of people that could potentially be excluded. Yeah, I'd rather be closer to Veterans Day than Thanksgiving. People don't generally, they return much more quickly after a 3-day holiday than after 4 or 5 holiday to go visit family. It's less than great, but I don't think we'll get as robust a turnout as this deserves if we move it to the end of the month. As for runoffs, I'm okay having a shorter one. I do have concerns about the cost. So I forget, how many early election days, early voting days do we have? 7 normally?
Usually 6. Usually 6, yeah, because that Sunday right before elections is no longer early voting day.
Okay. I'd be comfortable cutting that down to 3. The polls won't be as crowded, I imagine. So I'd be comfortable reducing it there just because we have to look at ways to reduce cost and the burden on the SOE. Yeah, those are my ideas. Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Ariola.
Yes, can we also ask the supervisor elections if it's possible to have mail-in ballots sent to every voter in the city? I don't know if the Florida GOP put that in their anti-voting law to restrict supervisors' ability to do that, but I'd like for us to look into that.
Madam Clerk, do you know the answer to that?
I'll tell you, I think with the new change in state law, it's required now that every voter even go as far as requesting that ballot every year. So they made the law more stringent, whereas it was every 3 years. I don't know if that's right prohibited, but I can definitely put that down as one of my follow-up questions with him. Excuse me, with Ms. Barton.
Okay, and thank you. And my last technical question, when are we going to make these dates official?
Today's discussion was really to get feedback from you all to kind of hear where you all are landing. And I'm hoping that we can work with the supervisor of elections over this next week, as well as the legal office, to bring back recommendations to your 9/2 meeting.
Okay, so I'm just going to add my 2 cents on the dates, because that is going to be a decision point. There's really only two hard dates that are affecting this. Number one being the actual date of vacancy. If that date were either later or earlier, it would affect when we can schedule elections. And number 2 being the 60-day window that we have to work with. So, as far as cost and timing, this is all going to be less than ideal. So I think we just need to move forward, schedule the election at the earliest possible time, and go forward.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Santos.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I strongly believe we should not have it on the 11/30. I think that's right after Thanksgiving. It would hit early voting. It would also, Chanukah is also during that time as well. So I think if we hit it the week before Thanksgiving, I think that would give us the broadest reach and have the least restrictions on people voting. Thank you, Mayor.
And then would you say have a runoff more than 6 weeks? Because otherwise then the runoff is the problem.
I mean, I think we have a runoff whenever we can, and I think if it's during the holidays, we can't have it then we have it the first week of January or second week of January or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
I just think the first election is important, that we don't have it on actual holidays. I think it's too close to those.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we can't make decisions today anyway, but personally, I think sooner is probably better than later. And keep in mind, as someone mentioned earlier, we don't have to do this on a Tuesday. So it doesn't have to be, it could be the week of the 15th as opposed to only on the 16th. That's neither here nor there. But my question is, are we going to have Supervisor Barton able to join us on this topic at our meeting next Thursday, or someone from her office, at least virtually? Would that be possible?
I'm happy to send that request over and see if they can accommodate us.
Okay, I think that would be really, really useful. Mr. Nee has all the legal information at hand, but it would be nice to have Supervisor Martin able to answer logistical questions about what's actually possible through her organization. So thank you.
Hey, thanks. Mr. Nee?
Yeah, I will just, in relation to what y'all are just talking about, Supervisor Barton has been very generous with her time this week, obviously. I do know one thing she mentioned, and I don't think this changes anything, as Commissioner Ariola mentioned. Things are just the way they are in some cases here, but her budget doesn't provide for any of this. So she would be sending us a bill in advance. And I told her, hey, we're good for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the way, that's just the facts, right? You know, I am intrigued by that November 2nd date as well. I mean, I know that's a short period for people to campaign, but it's almost like the British style, right? No campaigning, no fundraising until right before the election, then wham, you just have this very concentrated, intense period. And that gets the runoff, if we have one, at a decent date as well. Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
The only concern I see with that, and it probably isn't a problem, is that would put qualifying at a time prior to the vacancy exists. So that would be, I guess that would necessitate almost like the resign to run situation where there is an irrevocable resignation. So the vacancy would be at a date certain on October 1st, for example.
Yeah, I mean, that to me is, thanks for clarifying that. And that to me would be the sort of least of the problems, because that's only affecting a few people. I mean, right? I'm more worried about everybody else, the 100, well, not 141,000 people can vote, but the rest of the population, what's going to best facilitate their participation. So I'm not. So here's where I'm probably going to come down after we talk to the supervisor, either 11/2 with a 6-week runoff, or 11/16 and move the runoff until January. And let me look, I have my calendar here. So that would be, yeah, I mean, we could do it like January 4th for the runoff. And I'm sort of undecided. I mean, if there's 2 candidates in the field, all this is moot, right? But if it's a packed field and it's a likely runoff, then I want to make sure that runoff gets its own space where people can really participate, and we have as good a turnout as we can hope for. Ms. Caney?
Yep, I just wanted to briefly also just kind of step in and say, with all elections, we have a series of vendors that we also have to secure, and it's quite the task, I'm sure, in a regular election, much less one that is within 60 days. So please keep in mind, when we bring back recommendations next week, they will have taken into account the availability of all of the vendors that are required as well. to make this happen. And if you don't mind, can I get a little bit more feedback or discussion around the combining of precincts? Just some recommendations on what your thoughts are around that combination. That would be
so
helpful.
I'm going to say not ideal, but if that's what we need to do to make the election happen, especially from the supervisor side, then I'm willing to consider it. Commissioner Santos.
Yeah, same thing. I mean, if it's needed, then do it, but rather not.
So why don't, Ms. Gainey, why don't you ask Supervisor Barton to share her thoughts on that with everything else she's going to share with us. I think that might sway the commission one way or the other. Okay, then I don't see any other hands. So let's go over to Bethany to see if any of our neighbors want to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have a caller for this item, and I'm going to go ahead and open up our line. Sorry for any audio interference there. Our caller for this item is Darlene Pifallo. Darlene, if you're with us, you may go ahead and provide your comments. Once more, just checking with Darlene. If you're there, you are live in the meeting and you may go ahead. Once more, checking in with Darlene Pifallo. All right, sorry about that. We'll come back to her if we have a general public comment session.
It does look like the comment line is muted. Bethany, you want to double check that?
Thank you. Let me try this once more. All right, we'll try once more. Darlene.
Line muted.
I do that.
All
Yes.
right, Darlene, we hear you. I'm so sorry about that. You may go ahead.
Okay. I have a comment. Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. You may go ahead.
No, it's not. Thank you. Okay. I'm here, if you can hear me. I'm
We
here.
can hear you. You can go ahead.
I'm here. Okay, thank you. Hi. Can you hear me okay? Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I have one question, commissioners, and maybe I'm wrong, but I thought that since this is one district of our city, does everybody have to vote for this district, or is it just close to the district that she was in?
No, Ms. Pifallo, this is a city at large seat, not a District 1 seat.
Oh, I didn't hear that part. I'm sorry. That's why I was confused. I'm sorry. I didn't know she was at large. That makes it a lot more difficult for everybody. Thank you for your time.
Bethany, do you have anybody else?
No, sir. No one else for this item.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, any other follow-up questions you have?
I just got a message from Supervisor Barton, and she did want me to let you all know that she's on a mandatory DOJ conference right now. So that is why she was unable to be with us today, but we will hopefully get her on the line for next week's meeting.
Yeah, thank you. And please thank her for us for just reaching out. We'll work with her as best we can. Okay, thanks. We'll look to make a decision at our next meeting on this.
You're muted, Mayor. Still muted, Mayor. Still muted.
General public comment next, Bethany?
Yes, sir. We do have one caller for general public comments. We have Tana Silva on the line. Tana, you may go ahead.
Right, thank you. A couple of points that I'd like you to consider. I see the difficult choices you're called to make, and I ask you to see that I take care in sourcing material the same as I did as a reporter. Paul Myers said that testing now is for symptomatic people only, so the test positivity rate is higher than before. Even among the symptomatic, 85% tested negative for COVID. Variant numbers reported from the state this month were 11 Delta out of 193 samples. COVID patients were 11% of Shan's ICU beds. These are from earlier in the month. Clearly, hospitals are stressed by staffing shortages that are serious everywhere now in medical and other fields. The past year accelerated labor shortages and an aging population. The numbers change, but keeping perspective can allay destructive, politically driven decisions. A UF transmissibility researcher said effectiveness of masks can't be clearly separated from other factors. I say if someone believes face coverings block a virus, wear them, otherwise don't. Inhibiting breathing is harmful, obviously. A respiratory flu is going around. CDC last year lumped pneumonia, influenza, and COVID together as PIC. Reports of flu almost disappeared. CDC has manipulated numbers and definitions in ways that seem to go in one direction toward maintaining fear of COVID above all other measures of public health and well-being, treatment, indoor air quality, and so forth. With relentless fear-mongering, people look to someone to blame, an elected official, anyone perceived to be a diseased, dirty, disgusting, dangerous other, the unmasked, the unvaxxed, immigrants. What is that fostering in the city and modeling for children? Vigilantism, anger, intolerance, fear, shame, obedience. Shouting down and shutting down of questioning is real and dangerous to collective decision making. The mandates are unwise, they don't balance risk. An FDA press release Monday says the Pfizer shots increase the risk of myocarditis and pericarditis, especially among younger males. Quote, the observed risk is highest in males 12 through 17 years of age. Some individuals required intensive care support. Information is not yet available about potential long-term health outcomes. The Comirnaty is the new name for Pfizer. Prescribing information includes a warning about these risks, end quote. Policies based on panic have caused harm that gets almost no press. The damages are immediately felt, but also will not be fully known for many years, especially to children. So I appreciate any efforts you can make to calm the panic and make reasonable decisions for the long-term health of everyone. Thank you.
Our next caller for public comment is Edward Young. Edward, you may go ahead.
Yes, question I have in a situation like this with a resignation being this an at-large seat. It's a twofold question. I want to know how much longer time will that seat be open? How long a time for Gail to serve, commissioner to serve, and under what circumstances do the governor step in and appoint someone to a seat?
Yeah, so we can only appoint somebody if there's less than 6 months remaining on the term. Otherwise, the charter calls for a special election, which is the process that we're undertaking right now. The seat will be vacant depending on whether there's a runoff or not for either a little more than 2 months or a little more than 3.5, almost 4 months.
So on the 6 months, that's when the governor step in to appoint.
No, the governor does not. Yeah, the governor does. That's only for state offices connected to the state of Florida. So school board, county commission. The city stands alone. We have home rule and are a sovereign authority when it comes to our elections. So therefore, we set our own election rules and everything related to that, which means that we define what happens if there's a vacancy. And the way our city charter has defined that is if there's a vacancy with less than 6 months remaining, the replacement is appointed by the commission, and more than 6 months, a special election shall be held within 60 days of the meeting.
Okay, well, I know when the election is then. All right, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
No additional callers for this item.
Okay, thank you. Any commission comment? Ms. Sacco, Commissioner Sacco.
Both work. So Mr. Mann is back in the meeting, and I think this is going to be the end of his period as acting assistant city manager, correct?
That is correct.
Great. So I got you an acting assistant city manager award. You pulled through with a lot. It's repurposed, which will probably make you happy. But thank you for all the work you've put in and picking up a not very easy job for the past year. It's been a year. So thank you.
Thank you.
That was
I'll
great.
get that to your office eventually.
Sacco, and I didn't realize this was your last meeting. Thank you, Mr. Mann. I appreciate all your service during this time, and I know that you'll be glad to be back in your original seat, doing what you do so well. Commissioner Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. For clarification and to go back to the last caller, Omi, would you mind just letting folks know how long the next person will serve in this seat?
I'm glad you mentioned that because it hit me as the caller was speaking. Your term does not end until 2024. So you will essentially, whoever's placed in that seat by the electors of the city of Gainesville will serve through the calendar year of 2024 until another commissioner is sworn in January of 2025.
Okay, so this next commissioner will have about 3 years in their term.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep, good clarification. Okay, I don't see any other hands. So thanks everybody for your flexibility and willingness to do this. I think we actually had a good productive meeting, it being a workshop. So thanks for everybody for being so agile in doing that. With that, we are adjourned.